Well, the time has come to prepare the beds for sweet potatoes. I'll have my sweet potato slips ready tomorrow. And so what I have is I have beds here, but between the rows I have just grass that's dead. And so I have with me it is the Rogue field hoe. Now a field hoe is different than just your standard garden hoe that you'd use. Number one, it's much heavier. The head is significantly heavier. This is used to very easily go in and break up the ground. You can, I mean, it's incredible. And you can even do this with grass. That's the great thing. So you can use this to, if you're in an area and you don't have a tiller, or you don't want to use power tools, or for whatever reason, you can use this and it breaks it up. Like I said, even in a grassy area, obviously live grass is going to be more difficult, but if you keep this thing super sharp, it is incredible. So you pretty much have to sharpen it every day. I just sharpened it now, and because you hit little rocks, stones, these kind of things, and as a result, it ends up obviously dulling your blade. So every time you use it, you're going to want to sharpen it. It doesn't take too much time, but this is super easy. It's a like I said, I mean, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're thinking about a standard, tiller, many people are trying to do no-till, but if you got to start somewhere, you can either do the box method, but I do actual tilling. And it's funny, the idea of no-tilling is actually quite a bit of a misnomer anyway, because often people who do no-tilling do broad forks, and a broad fork is a deep tillage tool. And so the whole idea, it's kind of, it sounds cool to say no tilling, but in general, people are still, even if they're just doing that, now they're not maybe totally turning over the soil, and I get that, but it is still a deep tillage tool. But doing this, if you're starting over, like I have never dug up this grass here, so this is the very first time, so I need to have it ready for my sweet potato, so that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to keep working on that. And then I need to actually prepare the soil itself, and I have a few things that I'll show you in just a moment. Now, there's still a place for your standard garden hoe, but this just makes starting a new area so much easier. And one of the things that can really help is if you put it on just the slightest angle where you end up putting one of the tips, because it's actually sharp on both sides. So if you put it on one of the tips, it ends up, or one of the sides, it ends up cutting in just that much easier. You can go straight in if your soil's not too hard, but otherwise it can be a real benefit to go and use that angle. So here I am at my biochar pile, and I'm not going to go into all the details on biochar here. Biochar is different than ash. It is actually an ancient thing that has been around the world for thousands of years, and research has actually been done and is presently being done on the effect of biochar and the results that they're seeing in farming tests. They're doing it at the Michigan State University, and what they're finding is that it has a benefit to holding on to nutrients, keeping them in the soil, specifically in certain soils that are sandy. Now, if somebody already has really good soil, you have nice, dark, rich soil, or maybe you have clay, it's probably not going to do you much good to have any biochar. But for those of us who have really sandy soil, it might be a benefit. Now, you do have to be careful. If your pH is too high, it might actually exacerbate that problem. So you got to be careful, check out your pH. And one of the things about biochar is they have been using it for thousands of years. Like I already mentioned, they've used it in places like Peru, down in South America. They've used it over in Africa, West Africa, historically, thousands of years ago used this, and also in Australia. So this has literally been used around the world. And in certain conditions, it can make a significant impact. And it specifically can have a real benefit if you mix it together with the second thing I'm going to be using, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But I just want to give you an idea of what the actual biochar looks like. Once again, it's not just ash. It is actually like charcoal. Charcoal's an amazing natural remedy for stomach troubles. I just used it this week, had some stomach trouble, but nevertheless, this is way too big. Obviously having chunks of this in your garden is not going to be the best idea. So what I'm going to show you, what I do is I put it in something specific. I put it in a wheelbarrow, and what I do, I grab my trusty rock here that I have all prepared for the situation, and I literally use it like, I guess maybe like a mortar and pestle. I just crush it down, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, you can come over here. And one thing to think about is you probably want to cover your mouth. I'm not doing it right now because I'm just showing you how this is done. But breathing that ash from the biochar in the long run is going to be detrimental to your health. So you're going to want to cover up for this. Now you're going to want a lot more than that, but this just gives you an idea. Breaking it down to maybe 3/8 of an inch is what is suggested, at least 3/8 of an inch or smaller. And what that does is it leaves some organic matter in the soil, and typical compost is fantastic, it's amazing, but it also breaks down relatively fast, whereas this stuff can potentially last for thousands of years. When they go down to South America, they see these areas that were just sandy soil, but the natives of this area, or the people who lived there thousands of years ago, they found out that if they would use this biochar, that this burned kind of like charcoal, but they would cover it over with some dirt so that it would have less oxygen and kind of just smolder, that if they would use this, it would actually give life to the soil, and it's lasted up until today. And so they see this dark black soil in those areas that still has this biochar in it, and they call it terra petra, or this black earth there. And for people like me with terribly sandy soil, this is one thing. And the second thing that we're going to add is compost. And everybody knows compost is good, but mixing these two things together, biochar, you actually don't have to mix them together, but obviously there's nothing out there. Both of these things, to poor people, or to really any gardener who has the kind of soil that I do, both of these things are really black gold. So having compost, this compost is from last year, and one thing I should clear about the biochar is that with biochar, you actually want to let it season. You don't want to use it, you don't want to just burn it and immediately, throw it on your soil. It actually needs having some nitrogen added to it, and that can happen by multiple ways. And one of those simple ways is to allow the rain to come down on it, month after month. As it does, it gathers up some of the nitrogen, it activates this biochar and makes it more usable for the soil. And some actually see that it takes an extra year after using it on the soil, like the second year on the ground will actually cause the most benefit. So the first year you may not see that much of a benefit, but the second year can actually add more of a benefit. But mixing these two things together, the biochar and the compost, can actually help activate it even better. And this can just hold these nutrients in, because biochar, like activated charcoal, has a massive surface area that it binds to things, so it will hold these things in. So for people like me who have extremely sandy soil, having these things in your garden, it can help hold it in so that it doesn't just leach through, because that's one of the biggest problems for sandy soil, is it doesn't hold water well, and it really doesn't hold nutrients well either. And so you can throw your compost in there, or people are using all kinds of amendments or fertilizers and those kind of things. It just kind of goes right through. And so this way, using this over time, can actually help stabilize that sandy soil and actually make it much better that you're able to keep your soil. So I'll get my compost ready. And I always have compost piles going. Right now I probably have 5, 6 piles of compost, and at various stages, probably 3 of them that are totally ready, and others that could use a little more time. When I see some weeds like grass in my compost, I pull them out because I don't want to transfer them to the garden, and I'll just have them over there. And one of the things that you want to make sure to do is to stir up your charcoal and your biochar. I've already laid down some other materials on the parts in between. It's just this area that I just dug up that I haven't done any work on, and so I'm just going to be laying that over top. And I'm going to actually, to get it in there a little better, I'm actually going to use the hoe, and that'll dig it in the first few inches. Now I'm going to just finish it off by kind of raking it, just to give it a nice clean finish, if you can call it clean. Now, obviously, having your soil tested and finding exactly what nutrients you're lacking and supplying your land with whatever you're lacking is a great way to go. But in the long run, number one, historically, humans couldn't do that all the time. So in difficult times, you're not probably going to be sending off to some, corporation or government entity that's going to help you out with your soil. And so there are going to be times where either you can't afford it, or you just, you don't want to do it. And so what you do is you use what you've got. And these are two things that can be very helpful in certain situations. Remember, make sure to check out the pH of your soil. But these are two things that you can be using, but one of them, compost. You can never go wrong with compost. You can literally grow on 100% compost. That's phenomenal. But for most of us, we just don't have enough, so we have to use what we got. So, love to hear your thoughts, any suggestions, anything you've done, any natural methods you've used to work your soil. Love to hear it. Share down below. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button. God bless and have a fantastic day.